After over 10 years of silence, my son, John, suddenly got in touch. He said he had married without us knowing and now has 5 kids. Despite working late into the night, he complained of a tough life, so I started helping him out with housework and money after work, visiting his apartment. But it turned out that his oldest son and his wife were just loafing around, not working, and I was shaking with anger. I was pushing my exhausted body to keep going to that apartment every day. It's unforgivable. They're going to pay dearly for trampling over my feelings. The following weekend, as I was riding in the car driven by my husband, Steve, I got a call from John. "Hey, Mom? I'll be there soon." "Huh? We're gonna live with you from today. You'll take care of the grandkids, right? Do whatever you want. We've just arrived at our new place." "What? A new place?" Let me correct that. It's not 7 of us living together, but 8. "What? Hey, what do you mean?" "Goodbye then." I hung up the phone without paying any mind to the confused John. My name is Susan, a 55-year-old housewife. Last year, Steve and I celebrated our 30th wedding anniversary. While it's not uncommon to hear about couples our age divorcing or living separately, Steve and I have lived harmoniously without any major fights. Living with John, back in the day, was a constant struggle as he swung us around. Looking back, it felt like I was raising a monster. John never listened to us since he was little. Steve's mother lived alone in the same town, and John would run off to her place whenever he didn't like something. When I went to pick him up, I'd get scolded by her and she'd make snide remarks, which became a regular pattern. The reasons for John's tantrums were always trivial. He was ticked off because he wanted a hamburger but got curry for dinner instead. He was angry when I scolded him for skipping tutoring. And he was frustrated when a teacher caught him with comics at school and I chided him as well. He'd run away to his grandmother's house over such petty things. Every time, his grandmother would blame me, ranting hysterically. "You're not doing things right, that's why John gets scolded." "I'm sorry. John is more sensitive than you. Be more supportive of him." "Yes. There are plenty of other daughters-in-law, but there's only one John." With her coddling him, no matter how much Steve and I tried to discipline him, John showed no signs of remorse. And with each scolding from her, I felt more depressed and cried. One day, fed up, I confided in Steve, and he became furious and confronted his mother. "How could you say such things to Susan? I won't forgive you, even if you are my mother." "Oh, so I'm the bad one?" "It's because that daughter-in-law is too busy with work and neglecting John that he's turned out this way." I heard everything because Steve had put her on speakerphone. "Susan's been looking after John all by herself because I'm busy with work. She's doing a great job. Stop blaming her. You've been brainwashed by that daughter-in-law to defy your parents." "Well, fine, when you live with us, we'll make her quit her job and she'll learn to devote herself to me." After Steve yelled at his mother, she eventually called saying she wanted to live with us because she had hurt her knee. The thought of eventually having to care for her made me shiver, but Steve flatly refused. Later, after a discussion with his siblings, it was decided that she would go live with Steve's sister. My mother-in-law moved to my sister-in-law's place, which is quite a distance away, and that's when John started to become estranged from her and quieted down a bit. Maybe because he had always been rebellious since he was little, John's rebellious phase was mild. He was always grumpy and hardly responded to me or Steve, but he didn't resort to verbal abuse or lashing out at objects, and before we knew it, the phase was over, so Steve and I breathed a sigh of relief. But after graduating from high school, John quit his job after just 3 days. When Steve scolded him, John stormed out of the house. Right after, the mother-in-law called Steve. I heard about it on the phone. "Scolding him just for quitting a job, don't you think that's a bit harsh?" she said. "It's his fault for being late 3 days in a row." "Mom, please don't interfere," Steve retorted. Even after Steve hung up, she kept bombarding him with calls and emails, but Steve continued to ignore them. We thought John would come back soon enough, but contrary to our expectations, we lost all contact with him. neither my messages nor Steve's reached John, and our calls wouldn't go through. Even asking John's friends yielded no news of him. While Steve looked worried, he comforted me saying, "He must be doing fine. He'll just show up out of the blue one day." "Yeah. I guess all we can do is believe and wait," I agreed. "Yeah, that's right." With John gone, we threw ourselves into our work more than ever to distract from the loneliness. The house we got from my parents was getting old, so we decided to live in it while undertaking a major renovation. When it was all done, John suddenly called. "Hey Mom, long time no see."
"John? I was so worried, we couldn't get in touch with you at all,"
I said, my voice trembling. "You sound well, that's a relief. Why don't you come by and show your face sometime?" "Yeah, will do. By the way, Mom, you've got money, right?" I was taken aback. "Dad's in management, and there's money at home. Plus, you're working part-time," he continued. "Well, we're doing all right, why do you ask?" I replied, perplexed by his sudden question. "We're a family of 7, running low on cash." "It's pretty tight," he explained. "What?" I exclaimed. "Ballet, piano, French lessons, swimming, the cost of activities is just sky high, and with 5 girls, clothing expenses add up. Our salaries just aren't cutting it." With a sigh, John lamented, and I yelled out to him. Wait a minute. You're married? With a wife and kids?" "Yeah. I'll send you the address, come visit us. You'd want to see your cute grandkids, wouldn't you?" "Of course, I would." "All right, I'll come over." Confused but having made a promise, I visited the address he gave me on the weekend. When I opened the door of the 1-bedroom apartment, I was nearly bowled over by the trash overflowing from the narrow entrance to the living room. A woman with pink hair and heavy makeup came running from the back of the room. "Hi Susan, nice to meet you." "I'm Natalie," she said. As Natalie reached for a handshake, I felt a sharp pain on the back of my hand. Her long nails had scratched me, drawing blood. The constant crying of the children and the sound of their running feet, along with John yelling at them, made it a noisy chaos. "Susan, could you make us some food?" "I'm just so swamped," Natalie asked. "Sure, that's fine." I agreed, thinking if there were 5 kids, she must have her hands full. But the fridge was empty, and there was no canned food or rice to be found. With no choice left, I went to the supermarket, bought ingredients, and made spaghetti with meat sauce as the kids requested. John complained. "I wanted fried chicken." "Don't decide on your own," he grumbled. "Oh, did you?" "I'm sorry about that," I apologized. "The head of the house gets his wish first," he insisted. Well. Since she's gonna be here every day, it's no biggie," Natalie interjected. I was taken aback by her assumption. "All right. Tomorrow, it's fried chicken then," John said. "I can't do every day." "I work every day except Sundays," I protested. "Ah, but you finish your part-time job by 3 p.m., right?" "You can come over after that," Natalie suggested. Seeing Natalie's frustrated face, John also pursed his lips. "You can see we're having a tough time. We both come home late, so we need help with the kids. Daycare costs extra, and the after-school program's closed, so we're stuck. I've cut back on work to take care of the kids, but with my pay dropping, I'm at my limit." Overwhelmed by her nearly tearful plea, I finally gave in. I knew all too well how hard it was to juggle work and parenting. Starting the next day, I began stopping by my eldest son and his wife's place after work to help with cleaning and dinner. But no matter how tidy I left it, by the next day, the place was a mess again with candy wrappers, discarded clothes, and empty cans of juice and beer. Still, I kept visiting my son and Natalie's home. They always got back around 9 p.m., so I figured they were too busy with work to handle anything else and sympathized. Despite working so much, John and Natalie's constant refrain was "we're broke." I wondered if they were just in low-paying jobs, but without prying, I gave generously for Christmas and birthdays, offering quite a bit of money for each grandchild. After a year like this, I fell ill from overdoing it. I'm sorry. I can't make it over for a while, I apologized over the phone. John responded with regret. Okay. Sorry for pushing you so hard, Mom. Please rest up. See, he can be considerate. I shared this with Steve, who frowned. One of my subordinates lives in the same apartment complex as John. He said they've been seen wandering around downtown in broad daylight.
What? No way.
But with a sense of unease, I drove downtown after work the next day. Half in doubt, I parked near the station and waited for an hour. When my son and his wife appeared, I was shocked. They came out of a bingo hall on the roadside, chatting and laughing loudly as they walked past my car. Hit the jackpot today. Natalie, you should hang out with me at night instead of partying all the time. It's fun, right? Maybe once in a while. I get bored hanging around like you do. But don't you think we should start working soon? We've got rent and bills to pay, and we're getting notices. Don't worry about it. We can just ask Mom for money. I couldn't believe my ears. Well, yeah. Having 5 grandkids is enough of a good deed. They should give us money for that. John agreed and then made a shocking suggestion. Hey, how about we move back home? We can get money and babysitting for free, and Mom can be put to work. We could live it up forever. Really? Awesome. When do we do it? Their laughter faded away, and I slammed my fist onto the dashboard. I was so angry I could cry. After all the effort to give those two a break from their busy lives, they trampled over my feelings. I won't forgive this. They will pay for what they've done. The next weekend, as I was riding in Steve's car, John called. Hello? Hey, Mom? We'll be there soon. What? I switched to speakerphone so Steve could hear. We're all moving in today. You'll take care of the grandkids, right? I wasn't even surprised. I had just gotten a call from my mother-in-law. John and his kids had sent over a bunch of their stuff. So I cheerfully replied. Help yourself. We've just arrived at our new place. New place? Just a correction. It's not 7 people moving in, it's 8.
What? Hey, what's going on?
Goodbye. Ignoring John's confusion, I hung up. We arrived and got out of the car. Walking through the black gate and down the path, I gazed at the red-roofed mansions surrounded by trees.
This is truly a lovely home. It's like a dream come true.
It's a used place, but the interior is still pretty neat, and it was a real steal, huh? But Susan, it's frustrating, isn't it? Having to hand over the house we renovated to live out our days into John, Steve said with a frown. I turned to look at him. So, Steve, are you gonna live with those folks? No way. No matter how much they beg, I'm absolutely refusing. I nodded in agreement to Steve's firm declaration. I feel the same way. So, let them get along on their own, right? Instead, we won't help them at all from now on. That's fair, isn't it? Yeah. I'm glad I was able to switch my job to remote work. I'm relieved my transfer request was approved, too. Just so happens the branch nearby was short-staffed. While we were talking in the yard, the moving truck arrived. We pushed open the hefty door and watched with satisfaction as the movers carried furniture and boxes into the house, occasionally giving out instructions. It was sooner than expected when John gave in, just 3 days after the move. Mom, please come back. He begged on the answering machine, which had dozens of messages, prompting me to pick up the phone to complain. When I answered, he pleaded in an almost tearful voice. What are you talking about? You and Natalie wanted to live in that house, right? You moved out of a 1-bedroom apartment into a 5-bedroom house, that's an upgrade. No one told me Grandma was gonna live with us. I almost laughed at John's cry of dismay. Yes, through my sister-in-law, I had reached out to my mother-in-law, suggesting why not live with John. The selfish mother-in-law, having exhausted the patience of her kind and enduring daughter-in-law and son-in-law, and being shunned by other relatives for taking her in, had sulked back to her own home. She spread around the neighborhood that I've been abandoned by my family despite my bad knees. When I heard from Steve that my sister-in-law and brother-in-law were at their wits' end, I thought it was the perfect time to propose she live with John. Why? When John was little, he was Grandma's boy. The two of you teamed up to blame me and took joy in it. Back then, I used to cry every day. The school teachers would point out John's bad behavior, and if I scolded him, I would get sarcasm from my mother-in-law, and it felt like I was going to develop an ulcer.
I hate this spiteful old lady. She just lounges on the couch, constantly nagging Natalie. She interferes with how we raise the kids but doesn't contribute a dime. Doesn't take care of them either. Being around her just makes me angry.
Well, you guys did the same thing, didn't you? I retorted sharply. Lying about work to make me do all the housework while you went out to play. You knew I was exhausted from work every day, but treated me like a maid. And then you moved back to your parents' house because it meant you didn't have to pay rent or living expenses. Isn't that cheeky? John fell silent, and I went in for the kill. As a parent, it's natural to take care of your own kids. Sure, having 5 is tough, but then why did you have a big family? Even pets show love to their offspring. It's shameful to not work, gallivant around and mooch off your parents for living expenses. I hung up on John while he was still silent, hoping my words would make him reflect a bit. As I thought this, calls from my mother-in-law started coming in non-stop. I ignored them for a while, but had to reluctantly stop by the old house because I forgot something. The shoes were gone, so it seemed John and Natalie were out. I tiptoed into the kitchen to get what I needed and head out when I was caught by my mother-in-law, who had a face like a mask of fury. Oh, glad to see you're doing well. Not well at all. She screamed at me, red-faced.
Susan! You pawned off your failed daughter-in-law on me.
What are you talking about?
Don't play dumb. John's wife Natalie. What's with her?
I forced a smile and looked down at my feet. Trash overflowed the hallway and living room. It was a struggle just to walk to the kitchen without stepping on garbage. If the mother-in-law disliked it, she should tidy up, but likely all 3 adults didn't clean and just lazed around, making things worse. Come summer, it'd likely attract bugs and rodents, a miserable sight. When I asked that kid for some tea, she told me to brew it myself, and when I tell her to clean up, she pretends not to hear. She spends all day fiddling with her cell phone, lazily passing time, and doesn't even cook, just lines up the store-bought food packs on the desk. The house is a total mess, like a garbage dump. You need to properly teach your son's wife some manners. Please talk to Natalie about that, not me. Besides, if she's not cleaning up, John should do some housework.
What? Having a man do the housework, are you out of your mind?
My mother-in-law was ranting with incredible fury.
It's your fault your daughter-in-law isn't well trained. Come and clean up. And do some housework while you're at it. Even though you say you work every day, it's just part-time, isn't it? You should be able to take care of me. That's a wife's job.
I refuse. I'm busier than I look. Please enjoy tidying up with your grandson and your adorable grandkids.
Adorable? They're insolent, don't show me any respect, and I can't stand their noise. I would have doted on them if they were boys. A daughter-in-law who can't produce a son is just a nuisance. John should just divorce her already.
I sighed and confronted my mother-in-law. Did you say that in front of John and Natalie?
Of course I did. Then John got incredibly angry with me. Kicking out a poor old lady with bad legs, when did he become so heartless?
That's why, your own children don't like you.
What did you say?
As my mother-in-law's eyes bulged with anger, I coolly informed her. I don't want to be told it's just part-time by someone who's never worked a day in their life. I won't come here anymore. And don't expect me to answer your calls either.
Excuse me. Who do you think you're talking to like that?
I heard her angry voice fade as I drove back home. Later that night, the phone kept ringing insistently, So I told Steve what had happened and we discussed what to do. Steve looked exasperated and apologized.
Susan, I'm sorry you had to go through this. You don't have to answer her calls anymore. I'm cutting ties too.
Is that okay? Didn't your sister and brother cut ties with her as well?
It's fine. I'm sick and tired of dealing with her.
All right. So, Susan and Steve blocked his mother's number. Just when I thought we could relax, there was another call from John. Reluctantly, I answered the phone, and John's voice was shrill with panic. Mom. A notice about the mortgage payment came. Why is it addressed to me? This is supposed to be your house, right? Well, yes, it's the house I took over from Dad. I told you during the summer visit when you all came over, that we were changing the house's title. Huh? John sounded completely lost. I told you it was important to listen. But you were only half listening while playing on your phone. Really? I don't remember that. Frustrated with his careless response, I was appalled. We did change the title, but it was our decision, so Steve has been paying the mortgage. But you all just barged in and started living here without permission. So, it's only right that the occupants pay.
What? You're the ones who left. How am I supposed to pay a $1,000 monthly mortgage?
John raged.
Me and Natalie are up to our necks in debt.
That's not my problem. If you worked hard, you could pay off a little at a time, but expecting parents to cover for you is why you're in this mess, sinking deeper into debt.
I don't want to hear your lecture. This is bad, really bad.
John's voice trembled. Probably pale as a ghost.
Fine. $50,000. Just give me $50,000 and we'll manage for a while.
In a desperate tone, John was pleading with me. Lately, I've been doing well with betting on horses. If you give me $50,000, I'll turn it into $500,000 and pay you back. Then I can cover the back rent of the old apartment, the debts I racked up gambling, and Natalie's credit card loans. John's voice was almost enthusiastic.
Please, I don't want to let down your cute grandkids. We're family, we have to help each other out when times are tough.
I felt utterly drained. Holding my forehead and swallowing my anger, I spoke out. I have been the one paying for my grandkids' extracurriculars, giving more than the usual amount for school admissions, Christmas, birthdays. I thought I was doing enough. Huh? All that probably doesn't even add up to $10,000. That's nowhere near enough. You're the parent, you're supposed to help your kids. You have extra cash, so give us more.
Enough is enough.
When I scolded him, John gasped on the other end of the phone. Steve and I don't work just to give you money. We work to live our retirement without being a burden to you. I advised John as if talking to a child. You're already 30. When are you going to stand on your own? Before you ask your parents for help, find a job and start working seriously. You're a parent yourself now. But, from now on, you should rely on Natalie, not me. Work together and make it work. John seemed like he wanted to say more, but I hung up after saying just that. John and his wife Natalie had to sell their house with tears in their eyes because they couldn't pay off their $100,000 loan. In just a few months, their 5 kids had turned the interior into a mess, and the real estate agent told them they couldn't sell the house without repairs, which only increased their debt. Moving into an old one-bedroom apartment with their children, John and Natalie managed to pay off a small portion of their debt with the sale proceeds, and planned to pay off the rest by working. However, it turned out that both were secretly piling up debts, counting on my money. Can't believe they caved so quietly after all that talk about leeching off parents.
Shut up. The nerve of you, trying to mooch money from my folks.
The couple continued to fight like this, and soon got sued by the neighbors for noise complaints, leading to them being forced to leave the apartment. Since then, I've heard that they keep getting kicked out and moving to different places. Even so, Steve and I must have gone wrong somewhere in raising our son. It's too late to fix things now, but John is a 30-year-old adult with a family. From now on, he needs to show some responsibility as a husband and a father and earn a living. According to Steve's relatives, after a huge fight with John and his family, my mother-in-law moved back to her previous home. Her knees are bad, but she can manage on her own, occasionally calling in a housekeeper for help. However, she's been so demanding that she's been turned away by maid agencies lately. And it seems her house has become a cluttered mess. Steve and I live a peaceful life in a large house with a spacious yard. Gone are the days of being unjustly scolded by my mother-in-law or being treated like a servant by John and his wife. Now, Steve and I enjoy walks in the nearby woods and trips to museums and art galleries on weekends. We've promised each other that in our golden years, we'll rely on no one else and eventually move into a retirement home together. I may not have been able to connect with John, but I'm determined to stay close with my husband until the end of our days.